Well, this is our required meeting on the Synergy Project Periodic Oversight. Thank you, Zig. And welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Ready to go?
We'll turn the time over to you, sir.
Okay.
What? We did. Thank you. Tim
Steele, Assembly.
Bill Evans.
Amy DeBossi.
Dave Training. Others will be joining us as they can. It's fishing season right now.
Okay.
As Ernie tells me, he's headed to Kenai and Valdez and every place else. So.
Okay. Well, we'll kind of move on. We'll try to make sure we stay on schedule. These are the items that we're going to cover today. We'll talk a little bit about the activity of the Synergy Project. I'll give you some commentary on the progress of the project. We'll talk about master planning as we did last month, and we'll talk about dependencies again, and the potential pause. That's a new subject. And then a little bit about the project governance, the costs and how they're shaping up, and some conclusions. So in terms of activity, certainly we've been going through a transition period now with the new administration. I think it's recognized and good that three of the most senior Muni personnel on the project team have had some briefings with the administration. The administration has been collecting quite a bit of documentation from the team, and that's been going on. The other thing that happened last week is that SAP came in and did their first gate check, but that gate check was on the phase that was completed time of a month ago, 2 months ago. 2 months ago. So that was the first gate check, and that report is apparently being developed as we speak. I think the team is continuing to work on blueprint. They are continuing to follow the accelerated method for coming to design decisions, which is working well for them. And I think it has become obvious that the new administration is very anxious to learn what's going on. They want to know and understand what's going on in the Synergy Project, asking a lot of questions. They're focusing a lot on asking the team to in essence prepare a tremendous number of analyses and estimates and so forth, and replanning, and a lot of that is going on right now to help the administration understand what's going on. Okay. The project, as I mentioned, are continuing to focus on doing the design work. So that's the blueprint, and that's going up. And at some point in time, we're going to start seeing a ramp-up request for internal personnel to work on that. The time evaluation decision continues to hang out there as something that has not been decided, continues to have an impact on the project. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to recognize that depending on what that decision is, it's going to definitely impact the timing of the blueprint being completed. Blueprint really cannot be completed from an HCM perspective if the decision is that we need to have time management in SAP. If that happens, then they need to do a lot of design work, and it probably pushes all of that out to the December timeframe. Okay?
So was it based on us using Kronos to begin with, or?
Say that again?
Was the earlier decision utilizing Kronos?
It's certainly connected to that. I mean, the fact that Kronos is for some portion of MOA, is using Kronos for time collection, time evaluation, and so forth. And so the decision, was okay. At some point, I don't know exactly when, the prior administration was focused on trying to get a standardized solution and have everybody use Kronos, and that now has been thrown up in the air and is being reconsidered and re-examined. So because there are organizations that currently are using a different method for capturing their time, especially fire and police. So that's going on, and the decision then becomes: do we continue using Kronos or try to use Kronos as much as we possibly can, or do we sit there and say, well, wait a minute, we can probably capture time in a very similar fashion that we are doing today for PeopleSoft and just simply have it go into SAP.
We bought the SAP module for timekeeping, didn't we?
Yes, you do have it. It is there. SAP can certainly capture the time. I mean, and that's the decision, because in other words, for the HCM, the human resources side of the house, for them to finish their design, they need to literally come up with, okay, what are all the little detailed design aspects that we need to put in place as far as documentation is concerned for capturing that time directly into SAP.
Thank you, Zig. This
Okay.
continues.
The other major delay, potential delay is the fact that we're still kind of having difficulty coming to a conclusion of what we're going to do with the platform. What computer platform is the new system going to run on? Those decisions are still hanging out there. Certainly the assembly is, I think, is in about 2 or 3 weeks is going to be looking at that budget request, for going forward, and that hangs out there. The bottom line, and the reason why it becomes a concern, is that when you start talking about the realization phase of this project, that is the programming phase. That's when you literally start touching the software. If you don't have a platform, if you don't have a computer set up, if you don't have the latest version of SAP, that phase can't get started. And we're talking a January timeframe as opposed to November timeframe. So what's the progress? This is a slide that I've shown you several months now, and I keep adding and making changes to it. Some changes that are starting to show up already is, we talked last month that the target was 117. That's maybe starting to slide now. That's why the question's up there. And notice we've added the HCM, the 2B blueprint, which is waiting for that time capture, time management decision. Okay, so that's going to start pressing things. The 10.1, we used to say 10.1 up there, now it's looking more and more like 10.31 as we start having things slide and slip because we're trying to get information, trying to make some decisions. So that kind of thing is happening. The thing that kind of bothered me a little bit as I looked at this, I realized it's kind of hard to recognize and see what's going on here. And the other thing is that all of those boxes across there appear to be equal. And the bottom line is they're not. Okay, so I said, well, why don't we take a fresh look at this? The whole idea here is to recognize that blueprint is a little larger than all those other activities. So I've made the box a little larger. Realization is huge. It looks like a little box, but we need to recognize that that's practically an entire year. I mean, that's all the programming, configuration, testing. It's big. So we need to recognize that it is big. We shouldn't be looking at that as a little bar up there like everything else. The ones on the right side tend to kind of roll off the end. I mean, stabilize and run the project, and that's after you go live. Okay? So then, and notice that we've added this, the administration is considering you're doing a pause. I put it in red. It's there. It's a question mark. Okay? We need to realize that, okay, so what kinds of things are happening here? We certainly know when the new administration showed up, right about when Blueprint was getting going. Okay? We've added the fact that there may be a pause, and I just want to remind everybody that realization is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of things going on there. Okay? The other thing we need to start paying attention to is this pause. The project schedule now becomes a question if you do a pause. Because you immediately say, okay, how long is the pause going to be? You're going to pause for a month, 2 months, 3 months? How long is it going to be? And as soon as you do the pause, and I think there have been quite a few conversations about this, there's this strong possibility that the contractors and consultants that are on board today start going away when you have a pause. But the good part about the pause, of course, is that the contractors go away, you don't spend as much money. Bad part is you got a lot of corporate knowledge sitting there with those folks, and then ramping back up and finding those folks again is going to add time. So it could be as much as a 6-month ramp up. When you start combining the pause time plus the ramp up time, that's what you're looking at as a potential delay.
Well, see, this isn't our first pause. We had a pause when they did the revitalization of this program back in November, December time frame.
Yes, sir.
So this will be pause too.
Yeah, that's true. That's correct.
So it delays it even more. Question from assembly members. Tim?
How long does it have to be before you find it something other than pause, a break, sabbatical, or whatever, a restart? I mean,
You want to have a cup of coffee?
Well,
this is going to be costly if we do.
Sure. The key thing, at least in my opinion, is the timing of the pause. If you're going to do a pause, and
Do it the logical way.
it's a matter of what's the logical point of where that pause ought to take place. I mean, fairly obviously, you can take a pause instantly, right? You could just simply say, we're doing it today. Certainly you could do that. Don't think that's a good idea. Don't think that's a good idea. If you're going to do it, find a very reasonable place to do that pause, and we're going to talk about that. Okay?
Other questions, members, before we continue?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Zach, sorry.
Okay, all right. So the next item I want to highlight down here is, and we've said this multiple times, and I'm going to keep saying, you can't program until you have a platform. You need to understand that, okay? So development cannot start without that platform. Any early start on realization, I think you just need to recognize that's a placeholder. Yeah, you're going to keep some people going, but you're not really going, okay? So let's talk about, we beat the blueprint planning to death. We need to go forward. And I think the administration wants to know, what's the end game? I think you probably want to know, what's the end game? I would suggest to you that there is absolutely no reason that the team cannot estimate the durations of the end game, the durations of what's left. How long is it, about how long are you going to spend doing testing? Is it going to be, so let's say parallel testing for payroll. How long, the duration is probably going to be 3 months. And I think the team is very qualified and capable of coming up with that kind of duration planning. Okay? I think of that as strategic planning. It's not detail. It's not detail, because you can beat yourself to death with the details. But you certainly can come up with those kinds of durations. From an order of magnitude perspective, there is no reason why the team can't come up with estimates of the end game cost at this point in time. Knowing what they know, having as much information as they do from the blueprint, even though it isn't quite finished yet, there's no reason why they can't do that, because they certainly can sit back, and we saw this last month. The team has ideas of how much staff is going to be involved. They have that. They know about how many contractors are going to be involved. Therefore, you can use some kind of an estimated run rate. You can do that. And if you were to simplistically say it's going to last a year, okay, 52 weeks times the run rate, there's a number for contractors. Okay? Orders of magnitude, though. Orders of magnitude, recognizing you need to round up, okay? And recognizing that you need to use approximate numbers. You're not going to use pennies. You're not going to use dollars. Round up to the nearest 10,000, nearest 100,000. But you got a number. Okay? There's no reason why the team can't estimate the target completion date given the optional critical paths. And we've talked about this before. I'm obviously a very strong believer that the team should be paying attention to the dependencies, how things are linked together. And if you've got optional situations, such as which way are you going to go with the platform? Okay, let's say for discussion purposes there are two ways. There's no reason why you can't generate a strategic plan with both of those paths shown. And one of them is going to say, let's use a number for discussion purposes, 3 months, elapsed time necessary to get HANA in place with the latest version, versus, we're going to do it in-house, we're going to use our own computers, we're going to use our own staff. The numbers that I've seen are 6 to 9 months. There's no reason why you can't do that. No reason why, if you're doing that planning at a strategic level. Does that make sense? So, I'm thinking that the team needs to come up with some of these I'm calling them strategic plans. The key to developing some of these outlook plans is you need to understand what your granularity is going to be. There's going to be a tendency for everybody on the team to plan in detail. No question about it, because they're detail folks. That's what they do. That's what they do. You got to step back. You got to step back. As an example, the current master plan that I saw for the blueprint, okay, lays everything out down to the day. To the day. I would suggest that that's a level of granularity you do not need if you're trying to plan the rest of this project. You should be looking at quarters and weeks. okay, as opposed to weeks and days. Make sense? Okay? Orders of magnitude, timelines, I've said this. That strategic plan needs to be something that you can absorb, that I can absorb, administration can absorb. I would suggest to you that's 1 page. 1 page. It's a Gantt chart on 1 page. All right? All of the phases need to be connected. They need to be connected. Instead of folks saying, wait a minute, I'm not sure, I don't know. Wait a minute. If we're good project managers, we ought to know that this task precedes that task. It has to be done first. Or this phase, blueprint, has to be done before you start realization. Approximate. Realization can't start unless you have a platform. Ergo, there needs to be a bar in that program, in that project chart that says, install platform. Whatever it may be. Okay? Subdivide realization. You know, the team has been talking about realization a lot. It is one of the standard SAP standard methodologies. That's what they call it. But it accumulates and combines way too many things for anybody to be able to figure out what's there. So I suggest to you, hey, if it includes development, then there you should break it apart and say, okay, what portion of this is development? What portion of this is testing? What portion of this is documentation? Okay? Subdivided, and you'll recall I love to use the word chunk. So subdivided because it's too large of a chunk. Use the run rates for spending. Yeah, you can come up with, the run rates right now we've been talking about constantly for the last few months has been the contractor run rate. But you can certainly include, okay, here's the estimate of total spending. Here's the estimate of what it is for software licensing. You know, all those things can be allocated and come up with a run rate. Okay? Of course, the dependencies we talked about, and please, please, please avoid planning to plan. We need to get beyond this thing. You can't sit back and say, oh, you want an option plan? We'll take 3 months to do that. Doesn't buy anything, except delays, and you get way too much detail, and you get bogged down in the detail, and you don't get it done. You don't come to the point where you can make strategic decisions, which I think administration wants to make. I think you want to make. Make sense? So I'm not going to beat these to death. We've heard these, but I want to make sure we recognize that they still exist. Those dependencies still exist, and action has not been taken on them. So we've done some of this stuff with the hardware and the software. We've approved the fact we need to have a new version, but we still have some things to do there, which kind of sit out there. And I think they're on your agenda for your August meeting, I believe. Okay? Time management. There's a whole slew here of the various options on this whole time management issue now. Same thing we talked about last month. So it's been 1 month. We're nowhere. Now, something that I think would help this is if the team would provide a business impact statement for those options. And I'm trying to be very specific with that term rather than a technology impact. The technology can be solved, it can be done, it's not an issue. The team quite frankly, doesn't really care which way it's done. They just need to know which way so they can do their work. But if you talk about a business impact, this is going to impact this department this way. This is going to mean this department can keep doing what they're doing. That makes a lot of sense. You have a question?
Thank you. I don't have a question, I have a comment. I 100% agree with you. Glenda, this would make a huge, this would be very helpful for assembly members to understand. And I'm sure for the administration too. I know he has AFP up there right now, and one of the major issues is telestaff, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's something that, I know multiple members of the assembly are very aware of that issue. And so from a business perspective, especially when we're starting to talk about maybe not going with Kronos at all, we want to know, we're making the guess what impact that's going to have, which is going to make it simpler maybe, and maybe solve that issue. But it's a guess, because I'm not the expert. So that would be something helpful as you guys are having those conversations. you gotta break it down to, basic English for us non-IT people. Okay,
We
thanks.
will do that for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Assembly members? Go ahead, Zach.
Okay. So let's talk about the potential pause. So the team basically, in their briefing with administration, said, okay, there are 4 options. You can shut this thing down, right? Just shut it down, quit it. When you do, obviously, you're going to have to do something about the fact that you've spent a tremendous amount of money on a capital project, which now becomes an operations expense. No project. You can do the pause now. You can do the pause now, which means you literally could today say, dear consultants, please stop working. You can pause after the blueprint, or you can just, let's go. Keep going, okay? The team certainly, and clearly, no reason to misunderstand this. I mean, they went for option 4. Of course they're going to suggest option 4. Let's keep going. Because if you keep going, you minimize delays, right? If you keep going, you minimize delays. Anything else, the other two, the 2 different kinds of pauses, they're going to cause a delay. Okay, and we're talking about a noticeable delay, not 1 week. Okay. I'd like to talk to you about option 3. Okay? And this is just a matter of how does it come across from a point of view of which option might be more meaningful and more effective for the administration to achieve what they want to achieve, which is to figure out what's going on, make sure they understand before they commit. Somewhat understandable, but it will cause a delay. So what it gives the administration the most flexibility in terms of the strategic direction, in my opinion. If you remember, option 3 says wait until after blueprint. The problem we have here is after blueprint becomes a little fuzzy. You could call a pause as early as 10/31, but really the financial piece will be done on 10/31, but the HR piece may not be. And the reason, again, we're back to, if you don't know where time management is going to be done, the HR team doesn't know what to do. Okay? So, but the as-built, in other words, what's been done so far, probably can be done by 10/31. Right? Just time management won't be done. Right? So you could say, well, I'd like to have the whole thing finished before I call it pause. That would drag it out to probably 12/1 if I have to do time management. Because now the HR folks can sit there and do that, but that's going to take time. And it's going to push it out. It's going to push it out probably to early December 12/1. Okay, so you can do the pause there. All right? But in that case, you've got blueprint truly 100% done. Now, what's the complete blueprint do for you? It sets a stage. I'm speaking now from the point of view of what this can do for the administration. You possibly could identify a systems integrator. You know, we've had conversations about systems integration. The fact that today, the general contractor on building this house is MOA. Right? You don't have anybody that's really operating as the general contractor other than yourselves. Okay? So if you thought that it would make sense to do that, we've got to realize that those systems integrators will be much more willing to commit to a target date, a completion date, and a budget if they have a complete blueprint. If they have all the facts and they have a commitment from the muni that says, we're not going to change it anymore. Okay, we're not going to change it anymore. We're going to lock this down. They're going to be much more willing to say, okay, we'll do it for this amount of money. And we'll meet that date.
Mr. Vasquez has a question for you, sir.
Sure.
I think you make a good point, Zach. My question is, now let's take it to the extreme. And, say for a second, we choose to go ahead with HANA, and then the administration really pushes hard to basically sack SAP and go with Oracle or something else. What does that mean? How easy is it to get back before pre-HANA? Because I look at HANA as the real decision. This is the administration stamp saying we're going to stick with SAP and this is where we're at. Am I looking at it wrong? Or should I be waiting until, go ahead and invest in HANA, hope that it's easy to get back if you choose to go the other way? Or should I be looking at the fork in the road as option 3?
To the extent that the administration is willing to say they're going to continue with SAP, that's a good point. In other words, going with HANA is fine.
Right, and they haven't said that yet. So my question is then, I guess I'm trying to bring it back to, I want the administration to tell us when we expend the money on HANA, are we going, that to me is telling me you are going with SAP.
You can't go backwards. Once you commit to HANA, you can't go back to anything else.
So,
You jumped off the ledge.
yeah, that's, so to me, this, this option 3 takes into effect, we've kind of already jumped off the cliff.
Well,
Or stepped up the stairs.
here's my controversial comment is at the very bottom. Okay? If you do a pause, and and if the administration is not satisfied with everything that it learns, and it says it's not going to commit, then what happens with the pause is that you, in essence, could look at alternate solutions.
After you've spent all that money on going HANA, then you have to, so from a technical standpoint, how easy is that process, shifting from HANA to maybe the Oracle product?
The process of shifting away from HANA would probably be just as complex as it is to get there. So getting there, again, because it's basically, and the way it's being looked at today is we're going to ask SAP as a vendor to, in essence, host and do all that. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's for development purposes. So you haven't really got anything yet. You've just paid some money for the period of time that SAP has asked you for the X amount of money that they want every month in order to provide you with that service.
Sure, so I guess that answer in itself tells me that option 3 isn't really the realistic, decision on if you're going to go forward with SAP or not. To me, the realistic decision is HANA. That's when you're making, otherwise they kind of have you over a barrel, in my opinion. So I will look forward to see what the administration's advice is on HANA, because to me, that's their buy-in, that moment.
I think we'll have the decision on HANA before our meeting on August 11th, because that's a break point from my perspective for this thing. Once we jump into HANA, there's no coming back.
Right.
And I don't even know if Oracle, we started on a HANA system, it's probably proprietary.
It is.
SAP.
It is.
So once we make this decision, we're there.
Well, that's why, that was my counsel actually to them, was you need to make a decision, because HANA is the deciding point. And I understand what you're saying, but I guess I'm looking at it a little differently, but I appreciate it.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about project governance.
The minutes reflect, we've been added by Ms. Gray Jackson, Pete Peterson.
I apologize for being late, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Just some comments about what's happening from a project governance perspective. I think because of the transition, the executive steering committee, obviously the membership has been impacted. Lots of changes there. As of today, I don't think that there's a CFO that's been identified yet.
I think we have a deputy CFO coming online. He should be here, in a week?
That's what we've heard.
So,
Okay, well, that would be good news, because certainly the executive steering committee needs to get going. It's been sitting there, and it's time to get going. So I'm thinking that the first meeting probably will occur sometime in August, and that would be good. And if there's a deputy CFO who happens to be also the executive sponsor for the project, then that would be appropriate. It would be great.
how important is it to have a CIO?
I'm sorry?
The Chief Information Officer, we do not have one. How critical is that position?
I'd say that's pretty critical. Just as critical as a CFO.
Well, I saw you got CFO without CIO here, and I want to make sure they appoint that one soon.
Yeah, I would suggest to you, yes.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Mr. Chairman, how do you know there's somebody acting?
I know.
Yeah.
And that CIO definitely needs to be involved. Functional Steering Committee, I think, the key thing there, and as designed, the Functional Steering Committee is providing continuity through the transition. That's a good thing, And we need to all recognize, we have an interim project sponsor, and that project sponsor's been hanging in there. A lot of stuff, all of a sudden coming forward from a variety of angles. So that's a good thing. Project management office. The project management office meetings seem to have disappeared. They used to be weekly. Lots of things going on, lots of reasons, but they sort of continue being canceled. But I do think that it's important that we are still maintaining communication across the project managers. That's a good thing. It just happens to be addressed in their daily stand-ups. I don't know, what are those, 15 minutes, Tom, something like that?
Daily stand-ups?
Yeah.
They run half an hour.
Half an hour, okay.
Plus.
So the cross-fertilization is happening, which is important. That's good. The whole business of projects, information between sub-projects and the interrelationships of those, a lot of that's going on remotely, and it really would be good if that happened face-to-face in those PMO meetings. So that's the only comment I have about the PMO. This is a repeat slide. It's just a reminder that there's a lot of contracts out there. You're the general contractor. You got to worry about this stuff, okay? And and it's just it's sitting there. It continues to be there. And I know that the purchasing department is continuing to work, make changes to the contracts. That's a good thing. I don't have all of the current contracts. We're working with purchasing to get those so we can at least keep this up to date. But that's just a reminder that it's out there. So let's talk a little bit about project costs. Here's the latest weekly contractor run rate. Again, these are numbers that I'm getting from your organization. So we're not generating. The only thing we're generating is we're putting it in a trend graph. Okay, so you can see that the contractor number of contractors spiked in that 1 week at the very end. So it's jumped up a little bit. Okay. And also the last time we showed this to you, the run rate was 150,000. That's 154. Okay, that's where we are today. The other thing that we've been trying to do is we've been trying to track your total cost for the project. Again, we're using orders of magnitude, big numbers here. We're not trying to be precise. We're not the auditors. We're just simply trying to make sure we understand the trends and the movement and the relationship of dollars based on the various major components. So you can see at the very bottom is other. That's the sort of turquoise line down there. The green line is software. Well, you bought the software. You've got basically a sort of a set cost that's running along every month. No real major changes there until you have to buy some new software, and then you'll see some kind of blip there. The red is your internal staff, and we all know that internal staff, I think right around January, basically they were all, hey, where you guys can take off, we're going to let the contractors do a lot of this work. So they went back, and so you're not seeing any rise in internal cost for this last 6 months. Okay, again, probably we'll see a rise next few months. Probably we'll see a rise. If you're talking about, finishing up the blueprint, you're going to need some internal staff working on that, so you'll see a rise there. And certainly when you hit realization, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing some big spikes as they go through the various documentation stages, the various testing stages, and you're going to see that thing jumping up quite a bit. The blue line is consistently, all the contractors, and that kind of keeps growing. Okay, and then the total at the very top. So round numbers, you are now at 35 million. Round numbers. Okay, and if you were to stop the project today, okay, everything is classified as capital. All of a sudden, you're going to have an issue if you were to stop it. So conclusions. We definitely think you need a permanent executive sponsor. Sounds like you have one now. That's good news. And that person probably will be near full time. If you recall, Kate had indicated that she was putting in 75% of her time on this project. I'm not surprised. I think that your executive sponsor will put in a lot of time on this project. It's just too big to not do that. The time for the time management decision is upon us. Really got to get that resolved. And I guess that's a message to the administration. Okay? Time for the platform decision and budget approval is upon us. Got to get that resolved. Okay? Project phase, a pause appears likely, just unclear as to the timing. I can sit there and tell you what I think it ought to be, but that's going to be a call with the administration. And I really feel strongly about this. I think I've spent some time talking about it. The team's really got to generate a strategic project outlook, which includes all those options, and so you have choices and say, here's what happens if you do this and do that. I just think that's very crucial, and I think they can put dollars to it. I think they can put timelines to it. I think it can be a Gantt chart. Okay? On that note,
Let's go around the table. Tim, questions?
We need to move on it one way or another and push for some decisions on critical things, it seems to me. I don't have questions. Let's take it over.
Reed?
Well, I just think, we're sort of waiting for the administration to decide what they want to do with Hannah Conley. If they go for it, then, it's beyond the point of no return at that point in time. So I don't know there's much we can do until they make a decision.
Bill? Amy?
Well, I would just reinforce what Pete just said in that, we've given the administration time to get up to speed and to make a decision. And frankly, if they don't come to a decision by their next meeting, I'm ready to make one. And as the legislative body, and the reason I say that is we're the ones that appropriate the money. And, we're burning how much money a month?
$600,000.
well, for the contractors, it's 150 some a week. Now that there's other costs obviously going
Right.
on as well, but for the contractors, that's a big chunk.
So as the body that appropriates the money, we have to take that into consideration. And leadership needs to come from either the legislative side or the administrative side. I hope it will be collaborative, and I hope they will weigh in. I'll push for some sort of decision at our next meeting that this comes up, because I think, it sounds like they're going to have a decision. So I'm looking forward to getting their weigh in on the issue.
From my perspective, Ms. Gray Jackson, I meet with the chief of staff tomorrow. We're going to bring this way home because the decision needs to be made by this administration. Otherwise, on our meeting on the 11th, we'll make the decision. Because if we go with HANA, there is no going back again. We're fully committed to this thing. So, Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I really appreciate Mr. Blatty's comments, because he's right. We are the legislative branch of government, and we appropriate the money. But I just want to make one comment, and everybody knows this, okay? We have a brand new administration, and I'm not defending anybody. I'm just saying we got a brand new administration that inherited this quote-unquote mess. No, mess. All right? And if I were in their shoes, I would feel that I really need to take some time, and so that I'm making the right decisions to fix what's not fixed right now. And they've had some time, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get a decision from them pretty quick so that we can move on, because everybody knows that the more time we put things on hold, the more money that's being spent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Zig. We appreciate your briefing to us,
Sure.
and we'll see how this goes.
At your beck and call, as usual.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Ma'am?
If I may, we do have an acting executive, whatever your title is, that took over for Kate right
Whatever
now.
works.
What? I don't have my notes in front of me right now. Linda is acting in the position that Kate previously held. And so I would like to give you an opportunity, after hearing what our contractor had to say, to make some comments, if you like.
Okay, actually, I can make some comments. We've met with the administration a couple of times. They are asking a lot of actually good questions and asking for a lot of information. So what we've been doing is working on pulling together a lot of information, working on putting together financial information on what have we spent for the $33 million that we've spent on, where it's going, what projected spending is for the future, and looking at staffing, and what is our real burn rate, how much are we really spending every month on this project, and looking at how we can actually manage that, control it, and plan going forward. And the PMs are working on actually a high-level project plan, a rough order of magnitudes, what you called it, Tom, of where the decision points are and how we're going to get to an end point on this project. And we're going to be presenting that to the administration. They've been asking for a lot of information, so it's keeping us very busy putting it all together. And we're going to have some future meetings with them too.
How soon?
We're meeting with Mike Abbott Friday morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just come the 11th of August, this body will have to make a decision. Once you decide to go with HANA, there is no going back.
Yes, HANA and SAP are directly linked because HANA is the database that we're proposing to run on. The hosting is a little bit more flexible because you can go with HANA Enterprise Cloud for hosting, or there are actually third-party providers of hosting services. And one of the things that the project team is working on is we have a subcommittee looking at those options for hosting. Do we go with SAP for the hosting, or is there somebody else who can provide it to us, and what's the cost of that?
I think SAP, from what they told me, is building HANA into their next upgrade to the system.
Yes.
Yes, Bill?
Yeah, I was just curious about your comment that on August 11th we had to make a decision on that. Why would that be?
Because HANA, the decision on HANA is coming back in front of us.
Yeah, but we just about every time we meet push things back further.
I know that there's a cost every time you push things back.
Understood.
More money.
And there's a cost with rushing into things before the administration's ready and having making a decision that may be a bad decision.
Good point. Anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so thank you for your comments, Glenda. And Tom Dale is here, and he's the SAP representative. Would you like to make any comments? This is your opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I think Zig gave a very good and fair report. I've not had the opportunity to meet with anybody from the administration, but I have been meeting with both Glenda, Kim Hart, who's the MOA Deputy Program Manager, and Troy Swanson, who's your acting CFO. We've actually been meeting on a daily basis over the last week or so to talk about the kinds of things that we need to put together that we think we can put in front of the administration to give them the comfort level that they need to move this project forward. So I know I can tell you that from because I think this was a question that came up at your committee meeting several weeks ago, or maybe it was in an assembly meeting. I don't remember either, but I think the question was asked about, are we wasting money today? And I want to make it very clear that the team is very focused and heads down on working with the municipal employees on the blueprint for 5.0 and HCM. And we're doing the best job we can to kind of insulate them from the noise as much as you can. But the money that's being spent today is going towards building on the blueprint. As these critical milestones that Zig talks about, as they get pushed out, your cost implication will be down the road. You're not going to feel it today, but there are costs. And there are costs, as you guys know, since you've gone through it once, if you go with some kind of pause option, it costs you money to bring it back up. I thought that was very, very fair and good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. We have 2 minutes left. Would anybody else like to make any comments? Yes, no, maybe thinking about it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This meeting's over. Thanks for being here.